Hello, beautiful people. My name is Emma.
And I'm MC.
And we are your hosts of the G-Forces podcast. So, it's been 2 weeks since the, British Grand Prix?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was British. I had to remember for a second. I couldn't remember what race it was. And next weekend we have the Belgian Grand Prix, which is Spa-Francorchamps. And this weekend we had some Indycar. We had Indycar last week.
Yeah, they've had an IndyCar race every single weekend of July.
Yeah.
So last weekend was Iowa, this weekend was Toronto,
Yes.
and next weekend I think it's possibly Laguna Beach, but I gotta double check that one.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
So, we watched IndyCar this weekend.
Yeah.
MC is definitely a bit more paying attention to it than I am. I feel like I usually multitask.
So, for everyone, and I know we've said this before, but for everyone that's been kind of in that F1 rut, or I know that we're going to have another 3-week break, I think in August.
Yeah.
Check out IndyCar. It is so much fun. There's so much action that happens. And honestly, right now, it just seems like there's a political minefield when it comes to Team Penske and all the drama. And I'm just really curious to see what's going to happen at the end of the season with several drivers. But we also, you guys all know, we're going to the Nashville Speedway for the race Labor Day weekend, or the end of August for those that aren't American. And I'm so excited. I just wanted to pay attention because I felt like last year we went with no understanding. All we knew is Pato O'Ward. I mean, he's we knew him from McLaren.
All we really knew was
driving.
Arrow McLaren.
Yeah, whereas this season, Scott McLaughlin, what the hell is going on there? It is just
literally all of Penske.
All of Penske's a mess. I was happy to see Pato win Toronto today.
It was 2 races in the last 2 weeks, so he's won.
Yeah, because Iowa is a double header. So Iowa, they had a race on Saturday night and then a race on Sunday. And so he won one of the races in Iowa. But yeah, I'm loving it. It is so much fun. I like obviously Will Buxton is on Fox Sports, so it's really exciting to see him again from our F1 world. But it's also just a little bit more relaxed when it comes to the drivers. They seem to find enjoyment and speaking to media, or at least they have more fun with it, it seems.
Yeah.
But I also don't think
People
it's as
aren't so serious.
It's not as PR driven. You don't have the person following each driver around with a microphone the way they do in F1.
No.
And so it just seems it reminds me so much of regatta weekends when we were rowers. It's just a mess in the best way. For anyone that did any sort of tournaments, travel team tournaments growing up, I feel like it's just the same energy where it's everyone's kind of a mess figuring it out together. But yeah, I love it. I'm hooked.
So because we have Spa coming up, we are going to go over, MC's going to go over a driver.
I'm going to be talking about one of the Belgian drivers. There's been quite a few, but I'm going to be going over Jacky Ickx.
And then, because there's so much kind of going on in the F1 world right now,
we thought we would avoid an emergency meeting the way I think every other podcast did.
Yeah, we're just going to talk about it now.
And we're going to talk about it now, and we also I think I wanted to see the way things settled, and obviously we know very little. I think it's going to be the main topic of conversation this weekend, to the point that I'm expecting a snarky comment from Max regarding the questions, or I'm expecting it to be very shut down.
You know that Laurent Mekies is going to be in the press conference for the team principals, 1,000%. They're going to have him there.
Well, and it's all anyone's going to be talking about.
Yeah.
Especially,
if you don't know,
yeah,
I'm going to be talking about Christian Horner and him no longer being team principal of Red Bull.
And kind of what that's done to the grid, too. It's kind of chaotic a little bit right now.
Yeah, things are definitely crazy.
Yeah.
So, all right, shall we get into it?
Yeah. Okay, so Jacky Ickx, which is the way I believe his last name is pronounced, it is spelled Ickx, which in, I feel like American phonics, that is not really...
We don't get that.
We don't have letters like that next to each other. So he was born Jacques Bernard Edmond Martin Henry Ickx on January 1st, 1945 in Brussels, Belgium. Jacky didn't start his career in cars, but actually started in motorcycles in 1960. One of the articles in motorsport.com, I think, or one of the sources I used, kind of alluded to the fact that Jacky thought the racing cars was kind of boring.
Damn.
He would move on to touring cars, driving Alan Mann's Ford Mustang to win the 1965 European Touring Car Championship. So he's 20 at this point. He would switch to BMW the following year and win Spa 24 Hours. So the one thing with Jacky is that he, like a lot of the drivers back then, is just super diverse. He had motorcycle driving, grand touring, endurance racing, F1 racing. So he's all over the board. Like we've said with other older drivers, a lot of them would do both formula racing as well as some touring cars during the same year, during the same season. So in 1966, he was racing Ken Tyrrell's Matra in F3 and in F2. So he's being entered into both events. Again, this is the 1960s. F1's only been really around since officially for 15 years. So the rules that we know today in the racing world are just so drastically different, and to be able to go over them, we would have to be here for hours. So I'm going to try to summarize all the things as much as possible. In 1966, the age of 21, he would make his F1 debut, but it was actually in an F2 car. So his debut was at the Nürburgring, and since it was a 14.2 mile lap length, they were able to accommodate a massive field. So there were 11 F2 cars and 19 F1 cars, with 30 cars in total racing.
Oh my gosh.
Jacky was the fastest F2 driver by the end of quali, but the overall race was not great, with a bad accident that would take the driver John Taylor's life several weeks later after sustaining injuries in the crash. Jacky, who had to swerve and avoid the crash, would end up retiring his car, so he didn't end up getting to finish this technically debut F1 race, even though it wasn't an F1 car. A year later, in 1967, Jacky was entered into the same exact race with another F2 car in an F1 GP situation.
It's so weird that this existed.
Yeah. This year, he qualified third behind Jim Clark and Denny Hulme, and Denny would win the Drivers' Championship that year, by the way.
And he was in an F2 car.
Sadly, he would retire after 19 laps due to suspension failure, but obviously he had made his impression on the F1 world. Besides this race, 1967 was quite a busy year for him, with him winning the European F2 Championship, the Spa 1000 kilometers, and several saloon car championship races. Or championships in general. I wasn't really sure and just didn't have the time to look into his saloon car driving career. At the F1 race that year in Monza, he would finally race in an F1 car and would place 6th for the Cooper Car Company team. Enzo Ferrari, as we've seen so often, was impressed, and for the 1968 season, Jacky saw himself as a Ferrari driver. Jacky would win the French Grand Prix that year, along with several other podium finishes. He would stay there until in 1969, so a year later, Jacky would move from Ferrari to Brabham, and apparently there was issues with sponsors. He was kind of given advice to switch teams, so I'm not really sure what happened. He would win the German and Canadian Grand Prix that year and did so well that he was runner-up in the Drivers' Championship. He also happened to win the 1969 Le Mans in a GT40, so, man is busy. In 1970, Jacky would return to Ferrari, but he had a pretty bad crash that season, and he managed to not miss any races, just suffering minor burns. Jacky once again became the runner-up behind Jochen Rindt. Unfortunately, Jochen would pass in Monza, and posthumously, he would become the champion that year. Jacky would stay at Ferrari for the 1971 season, only winning one race that year. In 1972, he would once again only win one race with Ferrari. And in 1973, it was so unenjoyable that he ended up guest driving a McLaren at Nürburgring, and he was able to finish third in the McLaren.
So it was just Ferrari that was the problem.
Yeah, and like we've seen with so many of these teams, it ebbs and flows. Depends on the build of your car, whoever's designing it. After this rough season, Jacky moved to Lotus for the 1974 season, and it was not great. He wasn't able to win a race this season and only saw third place 2 times. 1975 with Lotus was so bad that Jacky left mid-season. Jacky's final few years in F1 are honestly really sad and a bit disappointing when you think about everything he's accomplished. I mean, especially being a Ferrari driver and what it means in the sport. In 1976, he moved to work with Frank Williams' teams, who at the time it was Wolf Williams' F1 team. He was working with another gentleman. He was unable to qualify the car a handful of races, and when he did qualify, he was nowhere close to the points. So at this point, you had to there were so many cars that were entered, you had to qualify within a certain parameter to be able to even get on the starting grid. So he just did not qualify to get into those races. He would leave the team after not qualifying for the British Grand Prix and would move to a small F1 team run by Mo Nunn, or it was just called Mo Nunn, I wasn't sure. And he still scored 0 points. In 1977, he would race only once during the Monaco Grand Prix, and in 1978, he only raced in 4 F1 Grand Prix, with many thinking that this was the end of his F1 career. In 1979, one of the F1 drivers on the grid broke both of his legs in a hang gliding accident, and the owner of the team decided to put Jacky in for the last 8 races. Unfortunately, his performance in the car was incredibly slow, really, really slower than anyone had ever seen. And it seemed that his time in this field was over, and a lot of people, even in articles, alluded to him kind of giving up the drive in this F1 world. Yeah. Jacky in the 80s would become even more well known. I mean, at this point, he is already pretty well known for his mastering of sports cars and his incredible record when it came to endurance racing. When it came to F1, Jacky won 8 championship status Grand Prix. He won 3 non-championship F1 races. He had 25 F1 Grand Prix podiums, 13 F1 pole positions, and was runner-up for the championship twice. Most people will remember him for his 6 Le Mans wins. That was a record up until 2005.
Who broke it?
I can't remember.
Damn.
But he had 6 Le Mans wins, all during the 70s, pretty much. He's currently still alive and well, and at the ripe old age of 80 years old. And they say, any type of driving he'll do will be for a Goodwood Festival type thing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's Jacky Ickx, who's I think one of the most decorated Belgium drivers. And, it's just crazy because this sounds so terrible, but you really don't hear about second place. He was the runner-up twice and, very rarely mentioned, I feel like.
I feel like I've heard his name a bunch of times before.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's one of those things that now that I've done the research, I'll probably pay attention and hear it more often. But yeah, pretty prolific career. I think well over a decade in the sport, and then just the mass amount of endurance racing.
The 6-time Le Mans win is crazy.
Yeah, and I think that's where he is put in a lot of people's just top driver spots.
There's several F1 drivers who have tried doing Le Mans and
haven't even finished.
Yeah.
No,
so for him to win it 6 times is insane.
Yeah, and I think it just shows the passion of certain people and how, F1 is not meant for everyone.
No.
And I also think F1 is one of those sports that the regulations and the cars change so much that, you might find success with one car, but then they start to, change the engines or make certain regulation changes. I do think reading about all these drivers and the way, over a decade they just ebbed and flowed. I do think the 2026 regulation change, for us, it's the first one we've seen for the sport, following it. I think it's going to be interesting to see how each driver does.
Well, they're getting rid of the ground effect.
Yeah.
And they're going back to the way that the floors were from 2017 to 2021 or 2016 to 2021, and people were like, "Welcome back, Lewis Hamilton."
Well, and I think that's going to be interesting to see, how the guys that have only been with this car, or even the newer rookies, how the younger drivers are going to fare versus the older drivers too.
Yeah, it'll be interesting for sure.
But yeah, so that's my driver of the day.
Okay, awesome. We are going to get into current news, really just Christian Horner. So, as we all know, Christian Horner, well, maybe you don't know. Christian Horner, it was announced, I think it was like July 7th or 8th or something like that, that Christian Horner would no longer be team principal at Red Bull Formula One team. I don't know the full. Oracle Red Bull Racing.
It's like GmbH.
Yeah,
I don't
some
know.
stupid shit like that.
I think that's the European or the German version of like LLCM.
Really?
Yeah, it's my company is a GmbH.
Oh. Okay. Well, cool. Good for them. And there's a lot to talk about. So, okay. So Christian was dismissed, and the crazy part is all we know is that he was dismissed from Red Bull operational duties. That doesn't mean he was dismissed as an employee of Red Bull in general, though. I think, to my knowledge, Christian Horner has a lot more responsibilities than just as team principal within the Red Bull world. And I think that he's just going to be behind the scenes for now. We'll see what happens.
I also think, too, for all of our Americans watching, it is an incredible, lengthy process in several European countries. Now, I'm not sure what his contract is with, but there are a lot of labor protection laws that you can't just, like here in Tennessee, we're an at-will employee state, so my boss could come up to me tomorrow and just fire me, and I'd have to pack up my bags. In a lot of European countries, there are stronger protections where you can't really just like get up and fire someone. Obviously, if there's like justifiable cause, and who knows, like none of us know what his contract is because there has been a lot of alluding to, performance.
Well, his contract is supposed to end 2030.
Yeah.
And he's been the only team principal that Red Bull has ever had since the beginning of its Formula One time. So obviously this is like a huge deal, and there's a lot to kind of unpack here. Not knowing kind of what his actual role is now.
Yeah.
Apparently the team did not know, Max did not know until it was announced to everyone. He apparently went to their their facility and told everyone at their facility that this was happening.
I had heard on one of the other podcasts that Max's like management team might have been told the day before. Like the drivers might have been told, and then that following morning was when they told the entire Red Bull team.
Yeah. I've heard from many people that they think that Christian Horner knew during the British Grand Prix that this was going to be his last weekend as team principal.
But there's been nothing. Like, and again, that's the problem.
That's all speculation.
Is that a lot of this is speculation. And
yeah, all of this is like, everything that we say is like alleged and a speculation.
Yeah, because
for legal purposes.
Because it just genuinely has not. And I think a lot of people have alluded to this already online. Like, we will never know the full story.
No. So, obviously, somebody needs to be replacing Christian Horner at Red Bull. So, the now former team principal of Visa Cash App Racing Bulls, Laurent Mekies, he is going to now be, he is now the current Red Bull team principal. Laurent Mekies, just a little quick background on him. He was actually a race engineer to drivers like Mark Webber. He was then promoted to chief engineer and eventually team principal of VCarb. So, like, he has the engineering background, which is interesting because now the person who's replaced him at VCarb also has an engineering background. So it's like they kicked out the one guy on the grid who doesn't have an engineering background.
Well, and that's the thing. Io Komatsu has an engineering background. James Vowles has an engineering background.
Jonathan Wheatley
has an engineering background.
Yeah. So Alan Permain is now going to be the Racing Bulls team principal. Alan originally started as an electronics engineer in 1989 at Benetton. He was on the team in 1994 and 1995 when Schumacher won the World Championships. Then he moved to being a race engineer for several years. And then in 2006, he was promoted to chief race engineer and was then... and he was with them through all of their name changes, eventually like Renault and now technically Alpine. Permain's role eventually did evolve as well, and he did move up to chief operating officer in 2011, and then sporting director in 2012, and he held that position until he departed following the 2023 Belgian Grand Prix. And people considered it like kind of a crazy end to a career at the team, which he was there for obviously the Schumacher days, like I said. And he was also there during Fernando Alonso's 2 world championships in 2005 and 2006. So, like, he was on quite successful teams for several years.
Yeah.
It's just interesting that they're replacing people with engineering backgrounds.
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of alluded to it and talked about how the sport, and from the outside looking in, where the sport was when Christian Horner first came in 20 plus years ago versus where the sport is now today. I think like so many of the athletic worlds, the professional athletic worlds, with the rise of social media, with the rise of, cameras and, certain things that like what happened 18 months ago is not acceptable. There's a lot that the sport has evolved. There are more women in the fields, and I think that you're getting a lot more technical drive, and you've seen it, and it's, well, yes, the money is there. I think the Playboy aspect is still 1000% in F1, but I think that it is changing, and it's changing rapidly. Obviously not as fast as we need it to, but I sometimes also just feel like Christian Horner just could not keep up with the fact that like the sport you knew 20 years ago is not the sport it is today.
Yeah. I also think this is like an issue that I've had for quite some time, and I've never really, I think I might have said something back then when this was all happening 18 months ago. Just a reminder, 18 months ago, Christian Horner, there were allegations brought up that he had basically inappropriate conversations and
With female Red
involvement
Bull
with
employees.
with a female Red Bull employee. And Red Bull said that they had looked into it and they had cleared him of the allegations. One of my major problems about this is he was not put on leave during this investigation. He was still working and doing the same things as he normally would during this investigation. Is that not considered like a conflict of interest?
Well, the other problem that
And
people
like,
say,
where's your HR department? No HR department would ever allow that.
well, the other problem that people have said is that, and I think they said this on the Fast and the Curious podcast, you know, why did you make the decision now and not 18 months ago?
Well, to
You
me, it
made the
makes it,
decision because of performance.
yeah, it makes
yet
it seem more like you care about performance and the safety of your actual staff.
And
And yeah, everything was allegations, and there is going to court next year, and we'd have no idea what's true and what's not true. But like,
it's not a good look.
seriously?
It's not a good look.
Yeah, it's not okay.
Yeah, and I think it makes a lot of, female spectators are on the rise every single year with this sport, and I just think it's put a really terrible taste into a lot of female spectators. Like, it's not the greatest move. It's a very confusing move. The timing is weird.
I mean, last year you literally had Christian Horner dealing with these allegations, and then Helmut Marko being extremely racist towards Checo Perez. It was quite a horrendous year.
Yeah, and to just continue with the just
Pretend
like
everything's
dog
normal
shit decisions, there have been so many red flags consistently with this team. I think the personnel, the mass amounts of personnel, high up personnel that have left over the last 18 months is incredibly telling. I think that, we're not Red Bull employees. We're not even, involved in the F1 scene. We're merely just fans that make this for for the fun of it. But it was handled so terribly for a team and for a sport that is so fucking concerned about their image and the brand. You fumbled, and you did the worst of the fumbling. And I think that this is like going to be a black mark on Red Bull for a while, because like I said, as the sport has evolved, your entire spectator viewership has evolved. It is, people are not okay with it. And I think we saw that response on social media from a lot of male content creators. They even called out the fact that, this is 18 months a little too late. It's who knows if the two are connected? They might not be, and this really might just boil it down to performance, but it's like
which is even more disappointing.
You're going to value the performance over the fact that, you know, this man had very, very serious allegations pressed against him. And again, I'm sure there are people that are going to sit there and say, you know, well, they had external investigations that cleared him. And it's like, you know, but I don't think in 2025 it's okay anymore.
I think for the girl to have gone to court, to bring this to court, knowing the way that the UK treats harassment cases and the fact that it's even worse in the UK than it is here in the US, with like the victims actually winning their case in the end, makes me feel like this is serious, because why would you continue?
Yeah.
And for that, it's not like this case is brand new, that like we've just heard of this. Like this was like months ago. People found out that this case was actually being brought to court.
I think the craziest thing too is the 2-3 days after the announcement was made, across TikTok and Reddit,
not one person was sad.
Didn't seem to be, and I think that that's really, really telling, and I hope Red Bull really notices that
people were celebrating this, actually. The amount of people that I saw post videos of using audios of like war is over, or like no one mourns the wicked. Yeah. Like people were not upset. People were literally celebrating him no longer being team principal.
Yeah. I am so curious to see who they ask, what they ask. Like, it is going to be a really interesting weekend when it comes to like conversations that are being had. Because on top of that, and do you want to get into the Max Verstappen rumors?
Yeah. So when we get to Spa, not we, but F1 in general, gets to Spa, the press conferences are going to happen. Max is probably going to be in one of them. Whoever's involved with drama right before the press conference happens always ends up being assigned to go to a press conference. Max will be asked about this, and he's going to give us some, like you said, a snarky response. Laurent Mekies is 100% going to be a part of one of the press conferences
Toto
as well.
Wolff too.
I cannot
George
wait.
Russell.
Toto Wolff will. Zach Brown will probably make a comment here and there. I think Fred will make a funny comment, knowing him, but I do think some of the team principals are going to try to stay quiet on this.
I think, truth be told, I think that the team principals are going to stay a bit more quiet than we think, especially because of how quiet and uncomfortable they were when the allegations were made. Like, it was uncomfortable, those press conferences. Yeah. You could tell. I mean, it's gonna be,
because if you say one wrong thing,
it's
a PR nightmare.
It's bad. It's just, it's messy, and I don't know if I really have like any opinion, or like, let me rephrase. I don't know if I can see Max transferring to Mercedes.
Well, yes. So the rumors that have been going on since before this even happened was that Max was going to be going to Mercedes, given the performance of Red Bull. And then when we all found out about Christian Horner like being released from team principal, people were like, "Is this?" A, this is either a sign that Max will be going to Mercedes, or B, this is a sign that he's 100% staying at Red Bull.
Yeah, people
it's one or the other.
Have theorized that this is Red Bull's last-ditch effort to keep Max, to maintain Max, because Max has always been quite loyal in his comments to Helmut Marko, where it is notoriously known throughout, you know, the F1 community that Max's dad and Christian Horner have
gotten into it many times.
Were not doing well with each other this season. And I think...
And last season.
Yeah, and I think that this has created so much chaos for that team that... when we first started watching the sport before the allegations were made, it was a, like almost militaristically run, how on top
now,
of things.
The amount of times I've seen Red Bull fumble a pit stop, like, they used to be perfect.
And you
Nothing
can,
out of line.
and it's funny, there's a few content creators online that have really pointed out that, you know, like, this is probably the creation of a really bad, unhealthy workplace. And I think, you know, when you're dealing
I
with
mean, you
all of
even
these
saw the one
rumors,
mechanic who left.
yeah, and I just, people have been wondering, you know, if Max leaves, where is this going to leave Red Bull? What's going to happen? You know, I think that Red Bull has dominated for so long. You know, we've seen so many teams go through these win streaks, go through like incredible phases, and, you know, sometimes they topple. They'll end up back there on the top again, but I do think we're going to see, and maybe it's for the best, you know, maybe a slight transformation to Red Bull that will.
I also do have to say, I do wonder if some of this might also be because of having two teams might just be too much.
Well, and that's the thing, is that there was someone brought up, you know, how much the F1 team is worth versus how much like the Red Bull Empire is. And it's like, I don't know how the ownership of VCarb works, but I do think it's really interesting that, you know, VCarb was doing better than Red Bull in some instances. And,
I think
you
they've
know,
had weekends where they've scored more points.
and so I think I'm curious to see if Laurent Mekies is going to transform it and hopefully push it in the right direction, because it's sorely needed.
I'm hoping that with Laurent Mekies, they'll change the freaking car.
Yeah. It also is just kind of like crazy, because I do think that this goes back to, you know, a lot of people, we weren't watching the sport when the owner of the team, Dietrich, passed away. But he was like full faith in Christian Horner. And I think it's just interesting, because I feel like we've seen this before, where a owner or a high up person will
I mean, when
pass
Niki Lauda
away,
passed,
and it
Mercedes
just
died.
shuffles and shocks the whole team. And I'm not saying that, you know, his death is to blame for all of these issues in Red
No.
Bull, but
I think that a lot of these issues actually stem from, I hate to say it. No, I don't hate to say it. I think this all stems from years ago when Christian Horner replaced Daniel Kvyat with Max Verstappen at Red Bull, and then Max Verstappen became teammates with Daniel Ricciardo, and ever since then, things have become a shit show. Yeah, they won world championships during that time period, but it has been a shit show since then.
yeah, it's been inconsistent. The second seed has been cursed for years. I mean, it's become like a running joke.
Since Danny left, it's been freaking cursed.
Yeah.
They're lucky Checo was as good as he was.
Well, and I think they're starting to see that. I'm just curious to see what a team that has been dependent on Christian Horner for 20 plus years is going to do this weekend. You know, that is a big shuffle. Team leadership, I mean, we know what it's like. Like, if you're facing unknown internally, it's overwhelming for your employees.
I do think it's good that Laurent Mekies has been with the Red Bull group for decades.
I also think, again, going back to it, he's done really good things at VCarb, in my opinion. He has
a good relationship with because he was working at Toro Rosso originally. He was on the team when Max came through. He was obviously one of the team principals when Yuki came through. So, like, he has good relationships with all of these drivers.
Yeah, but
because also the difference between, like, Laurent Mekies celebrating, like, Liam's return to, like, VCarb and, like, the way that Red Bull treated Yuki coming up to Red Bull. Like, Laurent treated it like, welcome home. Like, like, we're a family. Where when Yuki went to Red Bull, they were like, if you don't impress us, you're done.
Yeah, and I think it was becoming a bigger problem in terms of retention when it came to drivers. I mean, why would I, as an F1 driver, want to even risk my career at Red Bull? Why would I want to sit there and, you know, attempt to sit and try to become like Max, which we've literally seen no one apparently can do? Why would I risk my career to go to this team that cycles through freaking drivers?
And for the driver academy too, why the hell would someone want to join the Red Bull Drivers Academy when they've treated their drivers that have gone through it this way?
Yeah, I think hopefully this was a decision that will push the team in the right direction. But like we said at the beginning, we really don't know what this means in terms of what Christian Horner's doing with the company, if he's still involved, or if this is just kind of a fancy way of saying he's on leave. It's hopefully we get the clarity we want. I kind of doubt it, but it's going to be the press conferences are going to be wild. So I would definitely throw those on if you have F1 TV. I'm sure they'll be all over TikTok,
Yeah.
But
I don't think that Max will end up at Mercedes. There's also, just to finish adding on to that rumor, there's apparently, rumor has it that now that Max will be going to Mercedes and be teammates with George, and then Mercedes will be lending Kimi Antonelli to Alpine. I don't think that Toto Wolff would lend Kimi Antonelli to Flavio Briatore, whatever his name is, to Flavio in a million years.
I have no clue about any of that. I this is how I felt with silly season. I mean, it's so up in the air right now.
I think if Max is going to go somewhere, it'd be crazy, but it would be awesome if he went to like Cadillac.
Yeah, I think there's going to be more movement than any of us thought there was going to be, especially after last season.
Yes and no.
Yeah.
I think it depends on how long people's contracts are.
Well, I think it literally is dependent on Max's move too. Like, I think if it's like a Lewis Hamilton where it's confirmed, I think it's going to become
and I don't think that Max will announce it anytime soon.
Yeah.
Which is the problem, because then everyone's going to be up in the air forever.
Yep.
So, all right, we're going to get into our final thoughts. One other thing that I wanted to mention about just kind of what's going on in the F1 world. So as we know that Williams, they've had like a lot of DNFs and a lot of problems. And it's actually began because of cooling issues. So not just cooling of the brakes or tires, but also cooling of the engines and like cooling just in general, which is not great because you, in fact, race in the summertime.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see if they can get that on track.
Well, hopefully these, 2.5 weeks off have given them time to kind of like figure it out, especially with the heat that, I don't know if Europe is still in a heat wave, but I know
they are. I think this is the hottest.
I mean,
at least right now, I'm pretty sure I saw someone at Tomorrowland say this is like the hottest Belgian heat wave that they've ever had.
Yeah. So it's hopefully they can figure it out, but we shall see.
Yeah. So, anything else to go over?
No, I just think that
I feel like Oscar's probably so happy that all this is going on because now no one's going to ask him about how he was after the British Grand Prix.
Yeah, I think for me, I have to remember that like so much of this is run by men and men with money. Because it's just this announcement, while so many people were happy about it, I think for me it was like a day late, $1 short. It was like, I think I'm
happy about it, but then I'm not happy about the timing of it. Like, I wish it would have happened a long time ago.
Well, and I also think like it all, like, and I know I've said that the sport is changing, but I think it's a little bit of a wake up call for female spectators and, female creators, in the sense of like, it hasn't changed that much.
Like, yeah, they want more women to watch the sport and they'll kind of exploit us to watch the sport in a sense.
Yeah.
But like, they're still not going to make the progress that they really should at times.
And I think we just have to remember that, like, as a female community, as a community that's trying to diversify this sport, remember to stick together, ignore all of the stupid man children and just children in general. And, the change is happening, while not as fast as we want it to, but I think we have some really important female figures through journalism and content and even on the grid that I think, we get closer to what we want to see every single day, but just remember that unfortunately it's still quite a bit of a man's world. So,
yeah. All right. Well, like we said, we do have Spa this weekend, so please make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Follow us on all the things so that you can keep up with all of our spa content. Anything else?
Nope.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.